Hallows-episode 2.
Yes, my lord, that is true. But you know, as head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Thickness has regular contact not only with the minister himself, but also with the heads of all the other ministry departments. It will, I think, be easy, now that we have such a high-ranking official under our control, to subjugate the others, and then they can all work together to bring Scrimgeour down.
As long as our friend Thickness is not discovered before he has converted the rest, said Voldemort. At any rate, it remains unlikely that the ministry will be mined before next Saturday. If we cannot touch the boy at his destination, then it must be done while he travels.
We are at an advantage there, my lord,
said Yaxley, who seemed determined to receive some portion of approval.
We now have several people planted within the Department of Magical Transport. If Potter apparates or uses the flu network, we shall know immediately.
He will not do either, said Snape. The Order is eschewing any form of transport that is controlled or regulated by the Ministry. They mistrust everything to do with the place. All the better, said Voldemort. He will have to move in the open. Easier to take by far.
Again, Voldemort looked up at the slowly revolving body as he went on.
I shall attend to the boy in person. There have been too many mistakes where Harry Potter is concerned. Some of them have been my own. That Potter lives is due more to my errors than to his triumphs.
The company around the table watched Voldemort apprehensively, each of them by his or her expression, afraid that they might be blamed for Harry Potter's continued existence. Voldemort, however, seemed to be speaking more to himself than to any of them, still addressing the unconscious body above him.
I have been careless, and so have been thwarted by luck and chance, those wreckers of all but the best-laid plans. But I know better now. I understand those things I did not understand before. I must be the one to kill Harry Potter, and I shall be.
At these words, seemingly in response to them, a sudden wail sounded, a terrible, drawn-out cry of misery and pain. Many of those at the table looked downward, startled, for the sound had seemed to issue from below their feet.
Wormtail,
said Voldemort, with no change in his quiet, thoughtful tone, and without removing his eyes from the revolving body above.
Have I not spoken to you about keeping our prisoner quiet? Yes, my lord,
gasped a small man halfway down the table, who had been sitting so low in his chair that it had appeared at first glance to be unoccupied. Now he scrambled from his seat and scurried from the room, leaving nothing behind him but a curious gleam of silver.
As I was saying,
continued Voldemort, looking again at the tense faces of his followers,
I understand better now. I shall need, for instance, to borrow a wand from one of you before I go to kill Potter.
The faces around him displayed nothing but shock. He might have announced that he wanted to borrow one of their arms.
No volunteers, said Voldemort. Let's see. Lucius, I see no reason for you to have a wand anymore.
Lucius Malfoy looked up. His skin appeared yellowish and waxy in the firelight, and his eyes were sunken and shadowed. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse.
My lord? Your wand, Lucius. I require your wand.
Malfoy glanced sideways at his wife. She was staring straight ahead, quite as pale as he was, her long blonde hair hanging down her back, but beneath the table her slim fingers closed briefly on his wrist. At her touch, Malfoy put a hand into his robes, withdrew a wand, and passed it along to Voldemort, who held it up in front of his red eyes, examining it closely.
What is it?
Elm, my lord, whispered Malfoy.
And the core? Dragon. Dragon heartstring. Good,
said Voldemort. He drew out his own wand and compared the lengths. Lucius Malfoy made an involuntary movement. For a fraction of a second, it seemed he expected to receive Voldemort's wand in exchange for his own. The gesture was not missed by Voldemort, whose eyes widened maliciously.
Give you my wand, Lucius. My wand.
Some of the throng snickered.
I have given you your liberty, Lucius. Is that not enough for you? But I have noticed that you and your family seem less than happy of late. What is it about my presence in your home that displeases you, Lucius?
Nothing, my lord.
Such lies, Lucius.
The soft voice seemed to hiss on even after the cruel mouth had stopped moving. One or two of the wizards barely repressed a shudder as the hissing grew louder. Something heavy could be heard sliding across the floor beneath the table. The huge snake emerged to climb slowly up Voldemort's chair. It rose seemingly endlessly and came to rest across Voldemort's shoulders. Its neck the thickness of a man's thigh, its eyes with their vertical slits for pupils unblinking. Voldemort stroked the creature absently with long, thin fingers, still looking at Lucius Malfoy.
Why do the Malfoys look so unhappy with their lot? Is it my return? My rise to power? Is it not the very thing they profess to desire for so many years?
Of course, my lord,
said Lucius Malfoy. His hand shook as he wiped sweat from his upper lip.
We did desire it. We do.
To Malfoy's left, his wife made an odd, stiff nod, her eyes averted from Voldemort and the snake. To his right, his son, Draco, who had been gazing up at the inert body overhead, glanced quickly at Voldemort and away again, terrified to make eye contact.
My lord,
said a dark woman, halfway down the table, her voice constricted with emotion.
It is an honor to have you here, in our family's house. There can be no higher pleasure.
She sat beside her sister. As unlike her in looks, with her dark hair and heavily lidded eyes, as she was in bearing and demeanor. Where Narcissa stood rigid and impassive, Bellatrix leaned toward Voldemort, for mere words could not demonstrate her longing for closeness.
No higher pleasure,
repeated Voldemort, his head tilted a little to one side as he considered Bellatrix.
That means a great deal, Bellatrix, from you.
Her face flooded with color. Her eyes welled with tears of delight.
My lord knows I speak nothing but the truth. No higher pleasure, even compared with the happy event that I hear has taken place in your family this week.
She stared at him, her lips parted, evidently confused.
I don't know what you mean, my lord. I'm talking about your niece, Bellatrix. And yours, Lucius and Narcissa. She has just married the werewolf, Remus Lupin. You must be so proud.
There was an eruption of jeering laughter from around the table. Many leaned forward to exchange gleeful looks. A few thumped the table with their fists. The great snake, disliking the disturbance, opened its mouth wide and hissed angrily. But the Death Eaters did not hear it, so jubilant were they at Bellatrix and the Malfoys' humiliation. Bellatrix's face, so recently flushed with happiness, had turned an ugly, blotchy red.